Cash Color Campus Podcast, a high level of conversation, sponsored by Greenhouse Bliss. I have my guest in the building, Keisha. How you doing?
Hey.
Don't mind me, but that was the most unenergetic hey. She was like, what's up? I'm here. Well, I know you here for a reason, man, because I've been following you for a little while. And I've been, been very aware of the magazine and everything that you've been working on. So I'm actually honored to be able to speak to you today about it.
I appreciate that. It's really a pleasure to be here, for real.
No doubt. Like, before we get into, saying the magazine itself and the whole overall goal of the magazine, speak to us about who you are. Like, who is Keisha Ann?
Keisha Ann. I'm the MFN editor. Shout out to Instagram. That's where you
that's literally her name on Instagram too. Yeah. I'm the mother effing editor.
It's actually for music, fashion, and news.
Really?
Yeah, but I take motherfucking too. I mean, it's whatever. It really we can do either. It's really cool. But I'm a publisher, really a journalist by craft and by trade.
Yeah.
That's what I started off as, and that's kind of where everything comes from. And as a publisher, I try to help other authors and creative businesses really get their ideas out there.
Okay, and one of the businesses, actually no, when I first met you, you was over at Snake Nation.
Yeah.
Actually, I bumped into you because you was working with ABL at that moment.
Yep.
So you've been into communications and you've been into the media world.
Yeah, for a long time. Actually, since I was like 11 years old.
Really?
Yeah. At 11, I wrote for the Indianapolis Star. That's like the equivalent of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Are you from Indianapolis?
I am.
Okay.
Born and raised.
Naptown.
But I've been in Atlanta for like 13 years now. So
there's that. Wait, so you started when you was 11. You've been here for 13 years. Like, so you're an Atlanta resident more than anything.
Yeah, that's what people say. But I mean, it's not like I'm gonna forget where I come from or nothing like that. It's like.
Just not like she's gonna argue.
It took a legitimate 19 years for me to even change my area code on my phone.
Bro, let me tell you how long it took for me, and I still don't have a North Carolina driver's license. Like, when I was going to school down there, I told them I'm from Boston. Like, I'm never getting a license, no matter how many times y'all pull me over. Like, I'm cussing out cops. Like, I ain't never getting one of these bitches.
Boston is dope.
Boston is dope.
I've been there 3 times. That's one of my favorite cities. That's like.
Look, when I tell people, I try to tell people about Boston. Like, don't get it twisted. Boston has one of the richest black like cultures. Like, it's saying, especially when our history, you go from.
It's kind of racist though. Still.
Oh, it's hella racist. Like, in our racism, we do racism so. No, but wait, our racism, we do racism so much better than the South. When I left Boston, I figured when I got to the South, racism was going to be like in your face all day shit. Yo, racism in the South is so nice, nasty. Like, they'll invite you into their whole house and you won't know they didn't want you there until you dead.
Until you're like the casserole or some shit.
Yeah, like in Boston, they'd be like, yo, nigga, leave. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I could deal with you saying that.
That's bars. Like, so racist that curfews are necessary.
Bruh, look, I could deal with the fact you don't want me here. Like, y'all don't need to be over here. We could deal with all that. Like, that's how life works in Boston. I'm cool with our racism.
Pretty intense.
It is, man. But talk about intense. Let's talk about the magazine, Sapio.
Let's talk about it.
You know how quick, I've been saying it over and over in my mind so I can pronounce it correctly. And every time I look at you, I keep wanting to say Sapio.
I mean,
Sapio magazine.
Yeah, I don't know what that is with people. So a lot of people want to say Sapio. You are definitely not, you're not alone in that.
No, because, a lot of people, especially when the word really started getting popular, you started seeing people on Instagram. Everybody was a sapiosexual. Right. Everybody was so into brains, and I'm so into intelligence. And now we're realizing most people couldn't even pronounce the word. now we're fully coming to understanding that most people couldn't even pronounce it.
But it's weird because you say sapiosexual.
I did. Interesting. Where are we at here?
I don't know. It's just strange. I don't know. That's the only thing I'm saying. It's weird. People do mispronounce it, but they say the first part right. It's just strange. That is strange. But Sapio. I mean, it's a bi-monthly publication. That means we come out every other month, 6 times a year. It's what would be considered dual gendered in that every other issue is for the opposite sex. So the first issue of every volume is always for men, the second issue for women. And then of the 6 issues a year, we have 2 that are digital only, and that's for the LGBTQ community. And forgive me because I know that there were recently some other letters added to that, but I'm not.
I'm not adding the
I'm
alphabet.
not all the way hip on what all of those are.
I'm not even mad at you.
Nobody out.
I'm not mad at you, but it's like, come on, like I can just say they. At this point, just tell me the proper way to say this because I don't want to disrespect either. But we keep adding letters.
I don't want to be insensitive towards anybody's cause or nothing like that. No, but That's pretty much the rundown of Sapio. And then we do the Sapio Show podcast. So, that's somewhere you can find us on SoundCloud. We really talk to what we say, sexy interviews with intelligent people, smart people in the city. And then we also have Sapio Cinema, and that's our production company. It's our film offering. The magazine is more erotic.
Yeah.
Where the Sapio Cinema, that's where it's a little bit more hardcore of the.
Oh shit! I thought you was about to say the film would be like the Cinemax version of the magazine.
No, it's not soft porn. The soft porn is in the magazine.
Jeez. Okay, so now I'm yeah, exactly, because I've seen the magazine, so I'm like, so this is the soft part.
Yeah, that's soft.
That's crazy.
Would you not describe that as soft?
I guess you know what? Yeah, I would. It's not, saying you're definitely not seeing like vaginas and penises, you know what I'm saying? They're not being whipped out and they're definitely not being used.
Yeah, like the publication is not meant to violate anyone, but every space, every sexuality does have its own time and its own space and, its own just room for discussion and just, exploration. And I think that that's really, really important. That's why we do it like that with, every other issue being more centric to a specific gender or sexual identification, if you will. And really more so, like they always say about Playboy, about the articles and stuff, It's about the insight that's supposed to be offered.
And that's what I dig about it because, like I was mentioning earlier before we even started, I really dig black culture. You know what I mean? Clearly I'm black. I just love the black experience. And I love seeing black people discuss things that I guess are taboo to what they say is black culture. Right. And one of those things is sexuality.
Right.
And it's not so much you're pushing like sex, you're just pushing the conversation of sex,
right? And
I really dig that much about you, man. And when it comes to the magazine, how important was it for you to highlight black and brown people when it does come to sexuality and expressing sexuality?
I think of the utmost importance, honestly. There really isn't and hasn't ever been. I just think, first of all, if you talk about just the history of black people really quickly, and I don't want to get too deep, you know what I mean?
But we about to get conspiracy theory deep?
I know it's not conspiracy theory deep, but just in general.
Okay.
If you consider that for eon is only 1,000 years, so for eons now, black people have been being traded, our culture has been hemorrhaged, been being hemorrhaged from us. We don't really have any say-so in terms of how our influence is distributed or what the profit or reward we get from those things are.
No.
All of that stuff, and one thing that's definitely true to the black experience in America is, us being fetishized, male or female.
Oh, sorry. Correct. I agree with you. I was about to say that was me agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Like I agree with you.
Us being fetishized, male or female, and having everything about us, but particularly our sexuality and sexual identity sold back to us, before we even have the conversation about being able to, reclaim that or even say what that is for ourselves.
And have you're right, and have our sexuality actually quieted while they give you a stereotype that black women are overly sexual, or black men are overly sexual.
Right.
And like you say, even with the fetishes part, like to know that there's so many stereotypes sexually that are based with black people, and so many of them, especially men and women, don't even fit those stereotypes. So I can understand how identity-wise that would be almost impossible for you to live up to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're battling against a European version of what you are supposed to be sexually, and you don't even fit that. Like, how does that? You know what I'm saying? Like, and you don't even fit that. Like, that would make me confused.
And
about
also
that
a place to really talk about traumas. One thing that's really interesting about the R. Kelly situation is that brings into conversation, just a lot about, again, how black people handle and react to and respond to trauma. And it's yet something else that we haven't really had an adequate, space or time to really talk about and handle, And so it's important to talk about that because when you see sex, when you think about sex, that really determines a lot in your sexual identity, really is a lot about how you identify with the world within you, you know, and also around you. And so when you don't get the time to really know, like, again, just have those conversations with people who look like you, see those reflections and representations. I mean, my idea is that if somebody has to find Sapio, if a child, God forbid, has to go in there and find a sex magazine, as a black one, I would hope that they would find something like Sapio, where at least they would see themselves represented, and they would see other things that, if they got into it, it wouldn't just be abrasive or invasive. It could actually be,
I think you have a monster point, because I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking about myself and how I discovered sex for the most part. You know what I mean? And it was going through magazines and seeing certain things. And I remember the first time I saw Hustler, And I thought to myself as I was reading this, and I was like a young kid, like it's elementary school. I'm reading this and I'm like, this is so offensive. And I don't mean offensive because, you know, it's naked people in here. It's offensive how you were literally portraying black people in this film.
Yeah.
And I mean, in these pages, from hearing chicken wing vaginas to shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, this is me as a child, so I can see that what you're saying is correct. Like, I would rather my child find something like what your magazine is than stumble over how I stumbled over and thumbing through the stuff I was thumbing through.
And, you know, porn today is just... you know, and a part of the reason, I guess, why we try to have our hand in porn offerings is that, you know, porn today is getting, I feel like, increasingly convoluted and kind of perverse.
Oh, I feel like porn is the reason why there's a lot of racism. But you talking about not getting deep.
It's definitely one of the most racist industries in the country. I just mean more so like the incest porn and the consistent need for the, you know, sister fucks brother, or mother helps boyfriend fuck, you know.
Oh, and those would be the titles. And those would be the titles. Those would be the titles of them.
It's real strange. I mean, just again, strange. That's the only, you know?
It's crazy because you're playing up on something that people overly would think is wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like you're playing up against something that you would know outrageously is wrong. Like if you heard somebody was doing this was wrong, but you're watching
though.
this.
It's in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
You know, it's in films. I mean, incest is like... It's the new wave.
It's a weird wave, you know. And there's another weird. It's a weird wave because even when we talk about I'm glad we're having this discussion. I'm listening to a podcast and it was an erotic podcast, and I'm listening to stories on there. One of the stories involved an older woman being attracted to a younger dude. Now, at the time, the younger dude was probably like 20, 21, right?
Okay.
But she mentions in there that I've been looking at you since you were younger.
Right.
I said, that is odd as shit. You know what I'm saying? To be saying out loud. And then it comes later, there's a dude, a father who was attracted to this younger girl who's a friend of his daughter. And he said the same thing. And I'm like, yo, we got to really stop being so slick with stuff that you know is wrong. You know what I mean? Like, if one end you're gonna chastise people you see in Hollywood or people you see in public who get dragged out for this, then how are we playing up to it in our own work? It's not okay. No, it's not okay to be saying I've been watching you since you were a kid. Like, that is weird.
It's really, really sick. And one thing about sexual energy is that, like, you know, it's very much like being drunk and that you're open. You know what I mean? So once you start masturbating and stuff like that, and once you start looking at stuff like that, and you really start to ingest that into your spirit, especially on a vibrational level, I feel like, again, when it's like on some really raw sexual shit, I don't know why you would want to let that in.
Me either.
You know?
Me either.
Just weird energy.
Me either, man. Weird energy on another level. That's the weirdest flex ever. Do you feel like that's the weirdest flex?
Right.
Yeah. So when I was first trying to pitch the Cash Color Canvas podcast, it was a really hard sell. Like, I'm glad Herb bought the concept. You know, like, it was a really hard sell because at the time people just saw cannabis as a drug and they didn't want to have drug dealers or drug users around them.
Right.
But eventually, you know, saying it was able to consume what we do. How hard of a sell was it when you were first pitching the magazine and you were telling people what the concept was, that it was going to be this glorification of sexuality of black and brown bodies, and it was going to be this vivid imagery? Like, how many times did people look at you and be like, word? You know what I'm saying? Like, or were they really about it?
You know, it's a lot easier when you have the magazine and you can put it in somebody's hand, because normally people can start to describe it and sell it for you. They're like, you know, oh, it's this, that, and the third. But immediately, typically when you tell somebody something that's erotic, even still, their first question is, so what does that mean? Like pornographic?
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, yeah, exactly not. You know what I mean? That's actually not what it means at all. That's, but trying to really reinforce that to people and get people to understand that. Because again, so much of what you think of and what you have as a sample when you think of black sex and black sexuality, what you have uncut, you know, you have Blacked, you know, you have a Zane book, you have, you know, and all of these things have been important thus far in pushing the conversation, but none of them are still, like you said, really wholly representative of the black experience or every black person. And, it, you know, for me, it's not even just about the conversation of sex and sexuality in the United States. We really try to focus on, again, the diaspora. That's always one thing that you kind of see, and hopefully as a theme repeated throughout, like, all the content, is that it's not just about how black and brown people have sex in the United States, but how do they in Paris, you know? What is sex like in Brazil? You know, what are the relationship dynamics like in Japan, you know, or in Iran, you know? because the Western influence is so large.
Let me tell you, and even as you're speaking about what the dynamic is in different places, how about what's the dynamic in the inner city? Because when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about Kodak Black and Young M.A.
Okay.
Like, I'm listening to, and I'm watching this kid, right? And I'm like, I think you're playing, but I don't think you don't get that this is not a joke.
Do you think he's trolling? Like, you think he's trolling for real?
Do I think he's trolling? I think, but this is what I think. He is trolling because he believed that was being a joke. I'm looking at what he's doing and I'm listening to what he's saying, and I'm like, not only is this not a joke, it's actually very dangerous. What you're doing, you know what I mean? And again, it goes back to the fact that we don't have open conversations about actual sexuality. We just kind of go by stereotypes and go by music and pop culture and what we're seeing. Dude, you are violating on so many levels right now, dude. Like, violating on so many levels. What was your opinion on that? Like, when the Kodak Black and Young M.A. situation?
I mean, Kodak Black, you know.
Did you thought he was trolling?
He's clearly, I did not think that he was trolling, because he came back for another round of, you feel me, Instagram Live, and went back in on how he felt about it. So I definitely didn't think he was trolling. Yeah. But I thought, you know, his ideology and mentality is something that is kind of inherent to a lot of men in the Black community, and even a lot of women in some cases. And it's just, I think, a teachable moment to say that this is really how some people think, you feel me? And these are the things that we need to be working against. Like, these are the conversations that we need to have. We need to have somebody that feels comfortable enough to say, this is the way I feel. Yeah. You feel what I'm saying? So that we can start to educate you and we can identify, okay, maybe you're the one, because he has a rape charge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not, that's very tough. It's like, damn, bro, well, you have a rape charge. It's like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah, and now I'm hearing you actually describe, you know what I'm saying, exactly why. Like, you're saying, it's just, I don't even want to get back into it. But I thought, again, it was good. It was like you said, it was a teachable moment. If we actually took it as a teachable moment, like, we really should be having more discussions about this. And also discussions about your language, sir. You know what I'm saying? Like, and how you're coming across right now.
But I mean, let's keep it all the way funky. I feel like realistically, all of, or if you would consider 95 to 99% of Black language regarding sex and sexuality is relatively violent.
Yes.
They're violent acts.
Yes.
You know, I mean, on the actual physicality level, I don't want nobody to bust it open, tear it up, tear it down. You know what I mean? I don't really want to run up in it. I don't want none of that, you know? But there's really not any other way to describe, you feel what I'm saying? What we know to be or what are supposed to be pleasurable or enjoyable acts. And I guess there's that, you know, double consciousness. You feel what I'm saying? There, it's like, you feel me? That's not really what I want, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I want you to split me open.
Yeah, no,
I mean, like, that's a rap line.
Yeah, come on, like,
like that's a rap line, bro. Like, don't do that for real.
None of that. None of that's gonna work. But, you know, again, we need to start having those conversations about how we can communicate those things better. How can we express those things better? You know, why does it have to be lame to speak gently or softly? You feel what I'm saying? Or regard one another with respect and kindness.
Instagram says so. Like, Instagram says that all the time, man. How much have you learned about your own sexuality through making a magazine?
You know, that's a great question.
Thank you.
I would say a lot.
I
would say a lot, especially because of the fact that, you know, I edit a magazine that's for men as much as it is for women. Yeah. You know, a lot of people feel like, who know me, like it's like an alter ego, you know, or another personality, but I know it's really, you know, it's very true to who I am, and it's the way I see things. I probably think on some type of fundamental level, like, I'm not a germaphobe, but I really don't like germs, you know?
It's like fluid, like germs, or just like somebody, you know, like touching you germs?
I'm gonna say fluid out of context. Yeah, that can be, you feel what I'm saying? Fluid that's not within the context of what I got going on. That could be a lot. But I do think it's really interesting for me to, like, deal with sexual energy and to have a lot of people, you feel what I'm saying, be able to engage with my ideals of sex or sexuality through looking at the magazine. You know, it's not like a physical type of orgy, but it is like an orgy of ideals for real. And it is like a, you know, a form of group sex because it is sexual content. And people, like I said, they get to interact with it, they get to engage with it, you know. And I don't know, it's just a different way to do those things, you know, without having to have a whole ass.
Your DMs must be lit.
You know,
Your DMs must be full of perverts, man. Like ready to go. Ready to go. Like, I saw this picture. This must mean you are about all this. Like, that must happen all the time, dude.
Not as often as you would think, but, I do think, what I'm more always shocked by is just, like, comments. Sometimes people get, like, 64 pictures deep, you feel what I'm saying? And it's like a comment on each one. It's like, oh my God, like, these notifications are fucking crazy right now.
Yo, you ever read comments and be like, yo, dog, you should have never said that? Like, I read comments sometimes, I'll be like, bro, why would you actually say that with your actual factual fingers and mouth and that come out your head?
I mean, I had to do that literally the other day. I was like, whoa, a bit much. Like, that was a number. That was a real number. It was like 64 comments in. And I was like, sir, this is a bit much. And he was like, I'm sorry. I just get this way about the booty. And I was like,
oh, bro, don't get that way about the booty.
Don't get that way about the booty. That's extra.
Yeah. What role does weed play in your own sexuality?
I think as an adult, it's not been too often I've had sex sans weed.
Really? So it's just part of your thing now?
I'm a smoker.
Y'all don't like smoke during, right? Like, it's not like in the process.
I have.
That's boring sex. Like, if we're having sex if we're smoking while we're having sex, then I'm not doing something right. Something's not happening right.
I don't know. I don't think it was boring when we were doing it. I thought it was like adventurous. I thought we were trying something new. You kind of playing with danger too. It's embers and shit flying.
Word. That's what's up. Ashes all on you, and I'm like, nah, dog.
Walk on the wild side. Actually, think about it.
You mad because of blunt canoeing, like, and we in the middle of having the whole thing. So that's crazy. So it does play a role in your life.
Yeah, it's not like I don't know. Like I said, I'm a smoker, so for me, culturally, it's like I don't really do a lot of social things, without it or anything like that. It's kind of always just been something. It's an icebreaker, it's a conversation starter. It's an aphrodisiac, it's a peace offering. It's weed. Like, you feel what I'm saying?
Yo, it really is a peace offering. Like, how many times people who try to apologize and rather than just apologize, bro, you want to hit this blunt?
Roll up the blunt.
Yeah, like, you want to hit this blunt? No, I need an apology.
Yeah, can we use our words?
That's crazy. So, soon you have actually an event coming up, the Let's Talk About Sex. Speak about the event and your participation in that.
That is on March 28th. That would be this Thursday.
Yeah.
It is a panel discussion. It's actually cocktails and erotic conversation. So there will be a lot of different people in the house. Like, for example, the founder of the Sex Down South Conference, Erotic Treasures, which is a lingerie brand. That's really dope. It's actually hosted by Jade, the storyteller, the erotic storyteller.
I follow Jade, the erotic storyteller, and Jade, I subscribe to your podcast.
She's dope.
She is dope.
Yeah, she's dope. Y'all
she is dope. I ain't gonna lie. Like, I was listening.
For sure.
I was listening to one of her episodes, and I was like, "Oh, let me take this off."
Yeah. We're gonna say not safe for work.
Yeah, it's not safe for work.
But they are erotic podcast.
She got away with words. She got away with words that's like fly as hell.
Yeah, they're sex stories, sexy stories. But yeah, we're just going to be in there talking about sex, a lot of interesting questions flying around. I just got, the questions the other day. Sapio Magazine is actually a media sponsor, so we'll be in the building doing interviews with the guests and with the sponsors. Kiki from Cocktail Podcast will be there. Whatever. I'll be on the panel. We'll be on the panel.
I might want to pull up. Like, I want to see Cocktail, the Kiki's podcast. Like, I want to see that.
I think they're actually doing a live show soon too.
Really? I need to pull up. I like them.
Can I just for a second, I just want to ask, because this question has been like flying around, and I feel like it's been presented to me.
Wait, is this a sex question? Because I got to start now asking that first before I get blindsided.
It is a sex question.
All right, go ahead. Let me crack my knuckles.
Okay, and I'm just asking this, y'all. Like, I really don't want to offend nobody in the studio.
Go.
Like, I just got to know. But how do black men these days in 2019?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with, and what is the consensus on, and I'm asking seriously, for a friend, not for myself.
Okay.
Pegging.
All right, we out. Yo, for one, I don't even know if everybody even knows what pegging is. If you don't, there's an episode of Broad City. If you don't know what Broad City is, watch Broad City. There's an episode of Broad City that when I say me and Sherelle watched that, we was in tears, baby.
Yes, that is one of the funniest episodes.
What is my opinion on pegging? I think that one, we need to really stop being childish about what people like and don't like when it comes to sex. What I don't prefer, it doesn't mean everybody else don't prefer it.
Right.
But
you should have to.
But with that said, do I think that somebody should not do it? Like, nah. I mean, if that's your thing, that's your thing.
Yeah,
like my man on Broad City. Like, he took her back when he said, "Yo, this is what I want you to do."
Right.
And then she strapped up. It was like amazing. It was funny as shit.
She got ready. And she got to it.
Like I said, I don't know how most men take that. I'm gonna tell you right now. Like, asking dudes out loud, they're gonna say no.
Of course.
Now, if you have, like, again, if you put a post on your page and just have comments, there's gonna be some dudes who are gonna make a whole burner account just to tell you how much they love that shit. All right, I'm gonna tell you just how as people are, just in people in general. Like, some people be more.
It's gotta be like that. I mean, they say that a lot of people are into it.
People are more comfortable saying stuff anonymously when it comes to that. You know, and I heard you when you were on Blunt Podcast talk about kink shame. People are real anonymous when it comes to stuff like that because they don't want to be throwing it back in their face that this is what you like. You know what I mean? And that's another thing I think that we need to discuss when it comes to black people in general.
Right.
Things that you would want to do that constantly gets thrown back in your face that
right.
makes you be like, all right, well, I'm gonna jump. Especially, I'll jump back in the closet. You know what I'm saying? Like how quick we will throw in that somebody is gay in their face.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know what I'm saying? Like almost like it's an insult when you know on another end, if you heard it in pop culture, you're going to be protective of a person.
Right.
But you see somebody who you know and you be like, well, he's gay.
Right.
Or she's gay.
And I think the other opposite side of that as well is, you know, people who feel like they're lame or somehow, you know, not as valid or as adequate because they're more sexually, not what would be a normative, but, you know, maybe they're a little bit more sexually conservative. You know what I mean? And so they feel like, well, that's also what I was talking about on the Blunt Share.
Yeah, I heard you.
The square shaming.
Square
you know
shaming.
What I mean? It's like,
she's like, I've never kissed a girl.
Everybody
so
don't have to like everything.
Yeah. Everybody don't have to like everything. But, I'm very aware it happens.
Oh, for sure.
I watch TV. I'm very well it happens. So March 28th, the event goes down. If people want to get involved, how can they get involved?
Well, you can actually follow at Sapio Mag. That's SAPIO MAG.
Mm-hmm.
Watch us live streaming. Watch me do some of the interviews. The event is sold out. Shout out to Jade again for that.
Hey.
The building, I think it'll be a full house.
Look, you put sex on a flyer. People coming.
Yeah. They
Period. People coming.
They want to hear this conversation.
Yeah.
I want to have this conversation. I think this is finna be dope. I really think y'all should, again, check us out on Sapio Mag. Follow us on March 28th. I think at 9 o'clock we'll start the live stream. Y'all can check out the conversation. We'll be there. Y'all can see some of the action, get a little piece of it.
Word, get a little piece of it. That's what's up. Last question for you. When it's all said and done, what do you want to be remembered for the most when it comes to the magazine, the video creation, everything you do? Like, what do you want to be remembered for the most?
I just really want to be known, really as a consummate creator, hopefully somebody that was kind of prolific in the influence that I've had in just the various publications, of any sort, whether they be literary, cinematic, whatever. I would want people to, think of me as like a Hugh Hefner, Susan Taylor hybrid type.
Okay. All right, Hugh.
And I think at the end of the day, when the aliens come, I would like them to find some of my work and be like, this is how people lived.
I feel like if the aliens come, it's going to be Roger from American Dad. And he'll probably be all into that shit. He's going to be all into everything you did, man. Oh, my God. Keisha, thank you for coming through today.
Man, thank you again for having me. It's been awesome.
No problem. And that's Cash Color Cannabis, a high level of conversation sponsored by Greenhouse Bliss. Let's take these pictures.